Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? Welcome back to another episode of Into the Stands live here on WIUR. I am today's host, Robbie Basil, alongside Colin McGee and Chris Gambino. And if you're watching this live on YouTube, it feels so nice for us. We actually got 3 microphones for once, which feels different. I'm not going to lie, but we're actually starting off this episode with some breaking news for you guys today. Star cornerback Trayvon Diggs of the Dallas Cowboys is reportedly tore his ACL and is out for the season in a practice today. We'll start off with Colin. We can go into the Jets game later. This is big news. Like, what's your immediate reaction to this?
Well, listen, this is such a huge blow to that Cowboys defense that cannot be understated. I mean, look how dominant that unit was in the first 2 weeks, absolutely demolishing the New York Giants and the New York Jets, two teams who had pretty high expectations going into the season. And listen, that Cowboys defense gave up an average of 5 points. They gave up 0 to the Giants, 10 to the Jets. Trayvon Diggs, sure, people often talk about how much yards he may give up in coverage, but he truly is a great ball hawk safe corner, a guy who really has a nose for the ball, always, was leading the league in interceptions. So, although the Cowboys, the main headliner on that defense is still Micah Parsons, is still in that pass rush. Listen, I can tell you firsthand from watching that Sunday night game with the Giants, that Cowboys pass rush is dominant, probably the best in football, and that unit's still going to be phenomenal. I love having Dan Quinn there as a defensive coordinator, a guy who I personally feel should have an NFL head coaching job right now. I feel like, why would you give it to Jonathan Gannon for the Eagles, the job he did? Why would you not give it to Dan Quinn? I'm a big Dan Quinn guy. So listen, that defense I think is still going to be good, but obviously not having Trayvon Diggs is going to be a huge hit. A huge miss, but I don't think it's going to really impact them that much going forward. Obviously you're going to need to look to see what you're going to do there at corner. It's still going to be tough, especially in that division, but I still expect the Cowboys defense will be a great unit. You hate to see that though for Trayvon Diggs, a very special player, and we'll see how the Cowboys respond from here.
Yeah, and another thing, already a team that knowing that defense is of course going to need to be, at its best moving forward, right? Because they started off the season well. Definitely the biggest improvement I think we could agree on it for a team coming into this season was the Dallas Cowboys. But they were really winning these games because of their defense. Their defense was really getting the job done. Their offense, sure, putting up, right, they put 70 points in the first 2 weeks. But the defense is the star of the team. So losing a huge piece like Diggs is obviously that's going to be brutal for a team that already still has a lot more to prove. Hate to see that for him. Hate to see great players get hurt. But obviously wish him a speedy recovery and hope. I think at the end of the day, as Giants fans, we don't like the Cowboys, but the reality is they gotta bounce back from this. They gotta see we gotta see how they can bounce back from this, because their fans have been waiting a long time for this team to make a significant jump, and this year definitely looks like the year or the year that they can make some noise, and that's obviously a huge hit for them. But they gotta bounce back from this.
Well, we have another injury to talk about. We'll talk about that later on when we're previewing tonight's Thursday night football game. But I think we should talk about one of the bigger matchups from last week that we didn't expect to be a very intriguing matchup, and that is the boys in blue. The New York Giants had their week 2 matchup against the Arizona Cardinals, and I feel like for me it'd be disrespectful to go first on this. So we'll go to my man on my right, who we watched the game together. What's your initial thoughts, Colin? Like, it's a weird result from you guys.
So listen, obviously I spoke very much at length about how much of a disaster week 1 was against the Cowboys, and you kind of expect that against the Cardinals it'd be pretty smooth sailing. Listen, this is a team that is supposed to be the worst team in football. They're supposed to draft Caleb Williams out of USC and just rebuild from there and they're on. I will say though, going into that game, they played a very competitive game against Washington. I felt it was really impressed with what they did there, and listen, they came out swinging against the New York Giants, a 20-0 lead. And listen, at that point, I was ready to mail in the season. I was ready to get ready for Spurs basketball. I was getting ready to, because the Yankees are not going to do anything for the rest of this year. So listen, the Giants were getting outscored 60-0 so far in the regular season to start off the year. If you go all the way back to that playoff game against the Eagles, where they also got blown out, they were getting outscored 98-7 since that playoff victory. I mean, it's an absolute disastrous start to the season. You really can't go any other way around there. But listen, I've watched a lot of Giants football. I've seen a lot of poorly coached Giants football teams. I've seen teams coached by Ben McAdoo, Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge. One thing I can tell you is that none of those teams and none of those coaches would have been able to do what the Giants did in the second half on Sunday. I get it was one of the worst teams in football. I get it was a game they were expected to win, but listen, I can't help but be impressed with what they did in that second half. This is a team that we really kind of struggled to score the ball in general, and they scored 31 points in the second half, getting a 31-28 victory. And listen, they went every single drive score, and they scored they had 5 possessions in the second half, 4 touchdowns and a field goal. Daniel Jones, listen, he was phenomenal in that second half. He had about 320 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. He had an interception, but I don't blame that on him because that was another ball that actually bounced off the hands of Saquon Barkley, went to a Cardinals defender. He even had a rushing touchdown too. I saw a stat line. He's actually, I believe, the first player in NFL history to compile that stat line in a half. So listen, he showed up, and what can you really say to that? I get it was, once again, it was one of the worst teams in the NFL, but I can't help but be impressed. But I think the biggest story about this game for me, at least watching that comeback, was seeing how Brian Dable, at least it looked like he started calling the plays there. Now, listen, Mike Kafka was a guy who got head coach interviews as the offensive coordinator. He's a guy who actually called the plays last season, and I feel like he did a relatively decent job. Granted, I felt like a lot of his play calling was conservative at times, but that's mostly because the offensive weapons were limited. But seeing Brian Dable take the play sheet and then lead that comeback, it really begs the question, should Brian Dable be calling the plays? And I think I personally would rather see it because, listen, the reason why Brian Dable is a bigger name as he was in the NFL is because he was able to call the plays for that Buffalo offense for years, turn Josh Allen to a potential bust into an MVP candidate. I think Dable should be the guy handling that going forward. I feel like I'd be way more comfortable with the offense in Brian Dable's hands. But that's going to really come down to how much we trust Kafka. But listen, I'm still concerned about what I saw from the defense because, listen, in absolutely every single circumstance, giving up 20 points to Joshua Dobbs and James Conner in one half is bad football, especially for a defense who I think did an okay job last year. But listen, the pass rush has not been there. You really have not heard Kayvon Thibodeau. You have not heard Leonard Williams make any sort of impact at all. Although I will say the young corners, Deontay Banks and Trey Hawkins, you don't really hear their name a lot, which is a good sign. You know, they seem to be doing pretty good in the back end of the defense. Obviously, we're going into Thursday night with a pretty bad matchup against the 49ers. We'll get to at the end of the show. But the biggest story, at least on the injury front coming out of this game, was Saquon Barkley. Now, near the end of that game, Saquon Barkley went for a 1-yard run to kind of just get the veterans to field goal range, ended up hurting his ankle. I've seen that way too many times with Saquon where I got scared it was going to be a major injury. Thankfully, it's only a sprained ankle, probably out 2 to 3 weeks. Listen, that's going to be hard going forward. I'm gonna kind of struggle to see how Matt Breida, Gary Brightwell, and Eric Gray are going to carry the Russian attack. We haven't really seen any of them get many opportunities to really lead a Russian attack at all. I mean, Matt Breida is going up against his former team tonight in the 49ers, but it's really going to come down to the passing attack. And listen, Darren Waller, once again, had a very good game. Jalen Hyatt finally came onto the scene. You know, he had his first NFL catch via a 58-yard bomb, also had another huge catch in the fourth quarter for a deep gain, like what I'm seeing there. I mean, overall, I feel like the passing attack should be more well-balanced. We still have to see how it goes going forward. But listen, for a team that I was ready to absolutely give up on, to come back and respond like that, it really is something special. Chris, what do you think about what you saw?
They kept us intrigued. They keep the season alive, at least for another 2 weeks at least, right? Because I think, you know, we can almost write tonight's game off as a loss. But yeah, look, I think obviously the way the Giants won that game, special, and the fact that it was a come from behind win. You don't, you know, obviously being down 20-0 at one point and heading into the first half at the end of the first half scoreless. The Giants being scoreless is obviously not good, not a good sign. You know, being in Arizona and losing, right, as you said, Joshua Dobbs putting up that performance in the first half and being down 20-0 to the Cardinals is awful. But the fact that they were able to, you know, stay composed. Daniel Jones was able to have that half that he did, where you saw the stats. He was one of the greatest comebacks in recent memory.
It actually tied for the biggest in Giants history.
Right. I mean, unbelievable performance. Brian Dable calling plays is something that we can look forward to in the future, or, you know, as a possibility. And really, I think this is better than, you know, and I was, you know, been talking to people also around campus and you know, in general, and you know, the fact that the Giants didn't, it's not like the Giants had that 30-0 lead and then the Cardinals started chipping back at the deficit, or, you know, it's not like there was this back and forth game. I think both of those wins for the Giants would have been concerning. Still, I think we'd be sitting here and still concerned about the wins. Obviously, worse than that could have been if the Giants lost this football game, but they didn't, and they did it they won this game in style, right? That big comeback in the second half was special, and it may be obviously going into San Francisco. without Saquon, right? And Andrew Thomas, right, is
Mhm.
out. I mean, it's not ideal, and it was. I mean, this is a game as soon as the schedule was released. This is a game I think all Giants fans we could have written off as a loss, an automatic loss, pretty much. But I will say, and we'll cover it more in a little bit. But what I'll say about tonight's game is I think they will lose, but it cannot be. It cannot be another Cowboy Sunday night game. It cannot be that way. It cannot be a 40-0 loss. They can't be scoreless again. They can't, right? If it's more than a 30-point deficit, I think that is awful because, right? And I don't think we should just sit here and say that because of those two players that we have out, two of the best players on this roster. I don't think we should sit there and use that as an excuse for why we lost. This Giants team needs to perform, right? Put up some points, right? Stay in the game, at least make it a football game. Even if at the end of the game, maybe you do end up losing by like 25. But if it's, if you put up like 15 points or close to 20, 21 points, for example, or something like that, right? Just put up some points, right? Whether it's just field goals, right? Put up some points against this team. Show that you can play, with these guys, and then head back home in a game against the Seahawks, right? With some good energy, and maybe that's a game you can win. And if you win that, then you can head to Miami with overall good energy. So I think that's crucial for the Giants. Is they need to have this energy go week by week. Heading into each game, I think that'll go a long way.
And I talked to Colin about this yesterday. I don't think this is one of the most undeserving wins. You can argue it's one of the most undeserving wins that's going to happen this season.
What makes you say that?
I mean, what makes me say that? You were down 20 plus to the Cardinals.
Are you not impressed with the will of a team to fight back?
That's where I'm impressed from.
Exactly.
But if
that's what's the most important part about this.
Let me ask you guys a question then. If this happened against any other team, most teams in the league, would the Giants come back like that? I disagree.
Well,
I don't.
If you score 31 points in the second half, you have a good chance of making a lot of those comebacks. Would you bet?
Like if you say you were playing, let's go with Minnesota because I think this is just bringing up Minnesota. That's the first thing that came to my mind. So you're down 20 Minnesota at the half. Are you banking on yourselves coming back against Minnesota?
Well, if you score 31 points in the second half, no matter what,
would you score 31 points against Minnesota?
Robbie, did you watch the first game of the season?
Yes,
you would know
that this is a football team who was struggling to score points for such a long period of time. We lost 40-0, really got lost in the most embarrassing way you possibly could lose, and to still respond back
done worse
and score 31 points in the second half, you have to be impressed by that. I don't care what you say.
I'm impressed by the second half. I'm impressed by Daniel Jones and how the team responded in the second half. I'm very impressed with that. What didn't impress me was arrogance is not the right word. I just didn't feel like they showed up in the first half, and that happened against any other team.
That was the point of the comeback.
I'm sorry if that happened against any other team. I do not see them winning that football game at all.
They probably don't win that football game. And Robbie, no, we're not saying that it's this.
I'm just bringing up the point.
It was a great. I don't really see the point because it was a great comeback. I get it. We mentioned it's an awful football team that they came back against, but this is a team that lost 40-0. Has an insanely hard schedule.
Really had everything going against it. All momentum was against this team.
Was down 20-0 against this football team that they should have destroyed. And they respond by coming back and having one of the greater comebacks in recent memory. And Daniel Jones
the best comeback in Giants history.
Right, really. And one of the best, right, Daniel Jones having, I'd say that, yeah, it's clearly one of his best games, at least one of his best halves as an NFL player. So I don't see why we can't be happy. We're not saying this is a Super Bowl, team.
At least from what I've seen, I can't even say this is a playoff team.
I think you guys should be.
I'm saying we're going to lose tonight. We are going to lose this ball game.
Listen, I remember when that game happened. Giants fans on Twitter texting me, DMing me on Instagram. You guys were. I don't even know what word to characterize.
Well, you have to figure. I sat in front of my screen for almost 5 total hours watching this team get absolutely outclassed in every single facet of the game. Respond back.
I was right next to you.
A pulse. I was pretty happy to see it. Listen, you want to root for your team. You want to see good moments. Listen, that was one of the better moments I can remember.
My big takeaway from this game will be this. I love that you brought up players like Deonte Banks, those rookie corners. I think they had a phenomenal game as well. Couldn't agree more. I think the biggest question mark will be Brian Daboll calling plays was the biggest difference for me.
Mm-hmm.
It was Daniel Jones's gameplay. It was Brian Daboll calling plays. My biggest question will be, who will emerge as that number one receiver? Because I don't know who you would put it.
Well-
I want it to be, who do I want it to be and who do I think it will be, or two completely different answers. Who do I want it to be? Jalen Hyatt. I want it to be Jalen Hyatt. I think you both want it to be Jalen Hyatt. Who do I think it be? Who do I think it is right now? I'm going to be dead honest with you guys. I have no idea.
Well, in an ideal world, though, even though he's still a tight end, it would kind of be Darren Waller, be the main guy you go to, obviously.
But
first,
like out of your
team
actual receivers, who is your number one receiver?
We still really don't know. It's a
Exactly.
question. I would honestly, I would probably say Isaiah Hodgins. I really like what I've seen out of Hodgins. I think Isaiah Hodgins is the most reliable guy you have in that core. I know you also have Paris Campbell. He hasn't really shown so far, but I would give it to Isaiah Hodgins right now.
But I did really like the use of the deep ball to Jalen Hyatt. I think that really made that defense, that offense more dynamic. I am worried about Saquon, but listen, there was worse running back injuries that we could go discuss later. But we're going to head from one New York team to the other, and we're going to head to my neck of the woods, the New York Jets. Now, I know people are going to go after Zach Wilson. They're going to go after the defense. This is what you would classify for me as a team loss. And you can blame this on Zach Wilson. But if you really look back at the film, and this happened the last 2 years, and it drives me crazy. What did Zach Wilson do in those blowouts that made him look worse than everyone else? Try to do too much. And it still drives me crazy because I've watched quarterbacks for years. I'm going to be dead honest with you. I have not seen a quarterback in his third season still make some throws like what he did. Now, granted, some of his reads were good. I'll say this right now. That third interception, great read by the safety coming out of nowhere. I didn't even know the safety was even framed. So there were some bad throws by Zach Wilson, but you also have to recognize who they're coming up against. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys embarrassed the Giants on Sunday Night Football. You go up against another New York team with arguably as bad of an offensive line, maybe a little bit better of an offensive line, they were in shambles. The run game couldn't get going. Breece Hall, only 4 carries. I don't know what that was about. And this team, listen, you can blame Zach Wilson. I cannot justify you blaming Zach Wilson because he may have had only around, 100 yards after that one touchdown throw to Garrett Wilson. But the Jets, I didn't feel like they were out of it till the first drive of the second half finished, when they went 3 and out. And then that's when that game completely changed. When the Jets went 3 and out, Cowboys get the ball back, and it just felt like the Jets never really had any chance of coming back after that moment because that last drive that the Jets had a touchdown. Zach Wilson's arm got hit as he threw, and it was short to the receiver intended for Garrett Wilson. So, listen, Jets get an interesting matchup upcoming. Again, they get the New England Patriots. That's going to be one of my games to watch out for. I'll talk about that in a minute, but I'm going to toss over to you guys. How would you characterize this game? We'll start with Colin.
I mean, once again, this is kind of the story with the Jets team. They have a great roster all around, but it just comes down to putting up that offensive production. I'd say, holding the Cowboys to 30 points. Granted, you might want to do a little bit lower, but it's not like they exploded on you. You haven't seen the Cowboys offense.
That's a great point, but I wanted to ask you this question. When you look more, and this is what drove me nuts, compare what the Giants defense did in the passing attack to what the Jets did with better players. Like Dak Prescott, and this is what number he threw for over 250 yards. Mm-hmm. He threw for multiple touchdowns. He threw 31 completions. And I forgot to mention this in my commentary. Sorry, I just one thought just came to my head. The difference between what Dak is doing now and what they did last year was Dak Prescott's getting the ball out of his hands in under 2 seconds, which is the Jets' weakness from last year. If you watched multiple games against competent teams, New England did this, where you go for these 5-6 yard short throws to a tight end, a slant to a receiver. The Jets ran a lot of zone against Dallas, which didn't make much sense to me because the man was looking all right, with DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner here and there. CeeDee Lamb had 10 catches, which, the one pass intended to CeeDee Lamb that was guarded by Sauce Gardner, I believe, wasn't even a catch. Actually, it was 2 targets. One was a catch, one wasn't. So there's a lot of questions I have, but I'm talking too much. I'm going to toss over to you guys.
Yeah, but once again, my problem with this Jets team is, it's always going to be the offense that's going to come into question. Now, remember we were talking about him last week. Nathaniel Hackett. Why do Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook only have 4 carries? Zach Wilson had more rushing attempts than both of them.
Well, to be fair, though, they were letting him go. They were rushing 4, and they were dropping everyone back, anticipating the pass. And then they made that adjustment in the second half. Zach Wilson did not have a rush attempt in the second half.
Well, yeah, but once again, the Cowboys, stop the run. Then Zach Wilson, you let Zach Wilson try to beat the Dallas Cowboys, and as we've seen so far, he cannot do that. You have to rely on your strengths. The reason why Jets won football games last year, they played behind a strong defense, a strong running game. Brees Hall, before he got hurt, was really looking like the potential offensive rookie of the year. He was having a phenomenal season. And listen, Dalvin Cook too. This is a guy who was one of the top running backs in the league last year.
He had a fumble, by the way. Terrible fumble.
He had a bad fumble, sure, but this is a guy who's still a star level running back. You have those two guys there. I don't get why you don't go running with them. This is my problem with Nathaniel Hackett. Once again, the reason why the Jets brought him in was to be an Aaron Rodgers yes man. He was a guy who helped him for his MVP season, but once again, we heard so many stories back when Mike McCarthy left the Packers, how Aaron Rodgers liked to call his own plays. So Aaron Rodgers essentially controlled the offense. Nathaniel Hackett was just there to, like I said, be an Aaron Rodgers yes man. We haven't seen him actually be able to call an offense without a Hall of Fame level quarterback. I mean, you could argue Russell Wilson being a Hall of Fame quarterback but by that point, that Broncos team, no matter no matter what way you slice it, that was an absolute disaster of a season last year with Nathaniel Hackett. And now we see him here with the Jets, who once again, I don't think if Zach Wilson was a starting quarterback going into the season, Nathaniel Hackett would be the offensive coordinator.
I agree.
He would not be the offensive coordinator if Aaron
Rodgers. Do you think there would
be
someone in particular that you think would get the offensive coordinator? Because I had someone who I thought they were going to hire off the bat if we were not targeting Aaron Rodgers.
Well, I mean, I don't know about the specifics. Obviously, I don't follow the Jets coaching hires as much.
I thought it was going to be they're going to go young and semi-proven again. I thought the Jets were going to hire Kellen Moore.
And I would have liked that much more. Considering Aaron Rodgers being out for Zach Wilson, Kellen Moore would have been a much better choice. But once again, this is just the problem of Aaron Rodgers getting hurt. Right. This is the situation you now find yourself in. And you have to wonder, I know you don't want to hear it, but do you bring in the veteran quarterback? Do you go for a Carson Wentz? Do you go trade for maybe even a Jameis Winston? I think this is something that the team needs. You can't consistently bring, because say Zach Wilson has another bad performance, 3 interceptions, but and the record's getting lower. Don't you want to have another guy who can maybe compete?
So that's a fair argument. And I will say this, and I'm going to change my stance on this very quickly. With the roster they have and the frustration within the team, and I hate to say this, the window is closing faster than I thought on Zach Wilson for this season alone. And with the Jets' upcoming schedule, they get the Patriots. I am not holding him against the Patriots because he's going to get absolutely owned by the Patriots. If you say he goes out, the next 2 games are the Patriots and Kansas City. So you could take it with a grain of salt, but I don't know. I mean, this schedule was Aaron Rodgers central with prime time with Kansas City. You had prime time with the Bills. Now you're seeing Zach Wilson get in those moments. And listen, I cannot wait to see what Twitter says on Sunday.
That's one thing, because when they first had the schedule, you see Jets Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. You're thinking, oh, Aaron Rodgers versus Patrick Mahomes. How many people across the country? How many people across the country are excited to watch Patrick Mahomes go up against Zach Wilson?
Oh,
I mean,
listen, I'm interested to see if KC looks bad against the Jets defense. That's all I'm saying. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the thought about bringing in a veteran quarterback. I mean, another name I heard of is Mike Greenberg, right? The great Mike Greenberg. He said his dream scenario is Kirk Cousins.
I don't hate that. The issue is,
I think that would be perfect.
I think
but that's only if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back to play, because you can't just have Kirk Cousins come in for 1 year.
Yeah, we don't have the money we don't have the money to get Kirk Cousins right now. I don't think we do.
Okay.
And I also don't know. I mean, I actually don't hate it.
Well,
because he actually knows how to throw to a star receiver.
But
Garrett Wilson and Zach Wilson have 1 touchdown together, and it was against Dallas.
Right, but
actually, of course, it's 2 now. It was 1 against Dallas and 1 against Buffalo, but he had none in his rookie season.
Then I think how much Salah has said that Zach Wilson is the guy. It's just that to what point, to what extent is that true? But obviously, I think really this Cowboys game, right? You think of with the Rodgers injury and the magical win against the Bills at home. I feel like this was a game that I feel like this is a game as a Jets fan going into the season, even with Rodgers, you probably could have viewed this as a loss, right? Hitting Dallas,
Probably.
right?
Probably.
Hostile environment, even with Aaron Rodgers, right? Like hostile environment over there.
You could have, yeah.
Great defense, right? Everything. It was going to be tough regardless. It's still like to see better, right? As you mentioned, team loss, right? The defense needs to be better. Right, Zach Wilson. I mean, how much better can you get? But you got to brush this loss off, and you have to win on Sunday. This is a must-win football.
You're counting this as a must-win.
Absolutely.
Because all right, first of all,
I mean, I don't hate the idea.
I know-
I just didn't think you'd be the one to say that.
well,
honestly.
all right, and I am, I am referring to right. I was listening, as I always do, to 98.7 ESPN, the Michael K show, where Don LaGreca was talking about this, and he was it Michael K, I think, was the one who mentioned this, that this is a must win, and I absolutely agree, because if you lose this game, which again, right, the 14, it's a 14 game losing streak against the
I
Patriots.
don't know what it is now.
I believe it's
actually.
14.
14
It's
game
too many.
losing streak.
It's too many. That's what it is.
Not an ideal number, but right, these are not the Patriots of old. These are not the Tom Brady Patriots. These are not the teams that are going to go to the Super Bowl. I liked what I saw from them for week 1. They went out and lost again at home again to the Miami Dolphins. This is an 0-2 football team. They've lost to 2 good teams. They're not right. They're not that good of a football team. They're better than I think some people are giving them credit, but they're not that good. They have a good quarterback overall. But Bill Belichick's obviously an amazing coach. But this is and obviously I think he can put up a great coaching performance against Zach Wilson. But I don't. This is not that good of a football team. And if the Jets want to do big things and go to the playoffs, this is the type of team that you need to beat. It's just that history is obviously not there against this team. And also, you lose this game, then you can add another loss to the scoreboard, because you ain't winning in Foxborough. I can tell you that.
I know.
Oh
no, I know. You know me. I know that fact.
Well, of course, that's obvious. And I mean, especially if there are, if it comes down to the wire and the Patriots and the Jets are fighting for a playoff spot, you could definitely write that one off.
Last week of this season too. I mean,
yeah. So this is worth 2 games, or it's 1 game, but if you lose, it's going to be worth 2.
We're calling it 1.5.
Sure.
Essentially.
And then obviously after this, you have the Chiefs,
and then we do get Denver though.
But all right,
that sounds like a trap game as a whole.
And then it's the Eagles. I mean, overall, but. Again, we're talking about a team that's supposed to that should go to the playoffs,
could.
I know, but if they want to go to the playoffs, this is the type of team you need to beat.
I get swept by them again,
right?
If you want to get swept by them again,
and that's another thing. Again, being swept, right? You get swept by the New England, you're not going to sweep Buffalo. You probably won't sweep You're definitely not sweeping Miami. You get lucky if you don't get swept by them. And then yeah, I mean, you're looking at probably only one win in the division.
That would be controversial.
So,
but we are running a little low on time on football, so we're gonna give each of us about a minute to a minute and a half. Looking over the games from last week, which team made a statement and had one of the more interesting results or more interesting games from this past week? I am going out of left field, and my team that I was very impressed by, the Falcons. Listen, the Atlanta Falcons, man. If anyone follows my YouTube channel, I said the Falcons are going to win the NFC South this year, which not a lot of people were on board with. And what have they done? They've proven me right, which that does not happen with many teams this season for me. The Atlanta Falcons, Desmond Ridder threw for over 230 yards. I believe that's one of the most highest passing yard games he's had in his career. And granted, he has played less games than like a Zach Wilson, but this is a great stat for Desmond Ridder. I mean, Bijan Robinson really proving himself out here. Listen, I thought Bijan Robinson was going to be a not great fit in Atlanta. Boy, am I being proven wrong. I mean, someone had to prove me wrong this week. But the Falcons, they had a great day on the ground. They had almost 200 rushing yards on the ground, 430 yards of offense approximately. But you really saw one player who I thought that really needed to get involved this week, and that, of course, was Drake London. He had 0 catches for 0 yards. And, of course, Kyle Pitts disappointing everyone as per usual at this point. But, the Falcons defense held their own against Jordan Love and the Packers. So could this raise some red flags about the Packers? And what's to come from the Falcons? Because I don't think Falcons fans were expecting them to be 2-0. I mean, by the way, other news in the NFC South, Bryce Young had actually sustained an injury in the game on Monday night. He might not be able to play this week. That means Andy Dalton will be starting for the Panthers. That's just a note that I just found out about. But yeah, the Falcons, man, they were the team that impressed me the most. Colin, who's the team that impressed you the most this week?
I'm taking the team that lost. I'm going to go for the Los Angeles Rams. And listen, the reason why I'm going for the Los Angeles Rams is they only lost to the 49ers by 7 points. And if you remember, this is a team that won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and then they had a pretty disastrous season last year. But listen, they're getting they're the team that you can't overlook, really. Matthew Stafford, sure, he had 2 interceptions against the 49ers, but you see a guy like Puka Nacua come in, 15 catches for 147 yards. And listen, Sean McVay's offense, you couldn't really get to see it last year because there wasn't a lot of talent that was left. But even without Cooper Kupp, you're seeing a lot of guys come in and fill that slot role. And listen, I see next Monday night we're gonna see Bengals versus Rams. I think the Bengals could be on upset alert here. We could see the Bengals go into an 0-3 hole because the Rams are a better team than people are giving them credit for. Listen, Matthew Stafford, there's a question how much he had left in the tank. This is a guy who was still a top 10 quarterback the year he won the Super Bowl, won Super Bowl MVP, and then got hurt last year. In this division, though, with San Francisco and with Seattle, who Seattle also had a big win in Detroit, they're going to get overlooked. But I think the Rams are going to be a threat this year. I think they're going to be a team that's not going to go back down easy, obviously, with Sean McVay as the head coach. If Aaron Donald's still there, we'll see when Cooper Kupp comes back. But this is a team you're going to need to look out for in that NFC.
Chris, what's your team that you
I
had a
think
big
I'm gonna
day?
pick the Seahawks.
I feel like I've referred to them the most of any other team that's not the Giants. Or I feel like I mentioned the Patriots a lot, and of course the Jets. But the Seattle Seahawks with a big win against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. A game where they won this in overtime. A great fourth quarter, a great third and fourth quarter for this team. And you look at some of the stat lines, and you look at Jared Goff. Of course, Geno Smith had a fantastic game.
Big bounce back from him from after last week.
Jared Goff probably a better game overall.
I think so.
You look at the receivers for Seattle. Good games, right? DK Metcalf 75 yards, Tyler Lockett with 2 touchdowns. But then you look at Monroe St. Brown with 102 yards, right? And then Josh Reynolds with 2 touchdowns. I mean, the guys on the Lions probably had better games, and still put up 31 points against the Seattle Seahawks. Right, not a phenomenal defensive performance from them, but to stay composed, to still win this football game in overtime in Detroit against a different Lions team. That's a big one for the Seattle Seahawks.
I like that one. By the way, quick shout out to CJ Stroud, who threw for over 380 yards, and also Rip Nick Chubb after his terrible gruesome injury. I feel like if you haven't seen the video, I don't recommend watching because it's very gruesome, but he's also out for the season. And it's also the second week in a row on Monday Night Football that we've seen a star player be out for the season. But enough about the plays on the gridiron, because we've talked about that long enough. Let's head across the diamond next to Major League Baseball. And, there's a lot of interesting teams that have caught fire recently for no reason. And I just want to, before you guys I want you guys to really dive into some of the big playoff contenders. Why are the Padres playing good baseball now? I mean, what have they done? I think they've won 8 of 10 or something like that. The Padres have won 7 in a row and 8 of 10. Why? The logic behind this team, listen, the Padres, for a team that I don't root for, I have never seen a more frustrating team in my life not named the Angels. That just drives you nuts because they have so much talent. They threw in so much money, and yet they still underperform. I just needed to get that out of the way, but I'll open with this. And 2 teams have clinched playoff berths in the American League, and a couple can actually clinch spots this week, I believe, or next week, I believe. So I'll ask one of you guys, whoever wants to open, out of the teams in the wild card, who's impressed you the most, and who will be the 3 teams in the wild cards right now? Who do you think will be missing, and who do you think will be the 3 wild card teams
in the National League?
American League? We'll start with them because there is a tie for 3rd right now with the Mariners and Rangers. It's an interesting question.
Yeah, no, I mean, let's see, wild card. Well, yeah, it's pretty much clear that Tampa Bay's in it. I think Baltimore. Yeah, they could still fight Baltimore for that division spot. That's still not out of the question. Toronto doesn't.
They've caught fire. They've won 5 in a row. Well, I did not think they would be in this run right now.
I don't know. What I've heard, I feel like from Blue Jay fans, is that this team doesn't play with a whole lot of heart. Now, obviously, 85 wins is very close. They're gonna win 90 games at least, right? That's a good season. They're gonna make the playoffs, and it's a tough division. But I mean, right, and hitting wise, right? Of course, they're gonna beat the Yankees. The Yankees stink, right? Obviously, I mean, I just think this was basically the Yankees playoffs, and they completely choked. I mean, right? They had a chance to make things interesting, and of course, asking for a sweep is tough against a good team like the Blue Jays. But really, that's why I mean, seeing the Blue Jays crooked numbers that they put up the past 2 nights against the Yankees doesn't impress me all that much, personally. But their pitching has been tremendous. Yusei Kikuchi has really picked it up. I think Garrett Cole is going to win the Cy Young Award. But Kevin Gausman has put up a great year. I haven't looked. I actually have not looked at Jose Barrios's numbers.
I have not
I
either.
think they've been.
I
I
if you
think
continue talking, I'll take a look at
I
them
think
for you.
they've been. I think he's been a lot better. Look, I'm not trying to make it seem. And this also comes in a year where Alek Manoah is not part of the question, part of the equation for the Blue Jays. He's really. I mean, this has been a disaster of a year for him. Right? He's not even. He's basically given up on the season.
Where is he?
He's given up. He's at home on his couch watching the Blue Jays play
Attaboy.
baseball
Love
because
that.
he's just. I don't know what it was. He got sent down. Right? Constantly getting sit down. And he just said, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm tired of it. And I'm just gonna, give up on the season. I really, I'm not gonna judge somebody, right? I don't know the full details, but it's not a great look, especially right for a guy who's on a team that's going to the playoffs. But he'll be back. Right? He's still a phenomenal pitcher. I think he'll definitely. This just was not his year. But the reason I bring him up, right? A great pitcher, right? Or used to be great in the major league level, and not even a factor for this Blue Jays pitching. That's been so good. The bullpen is solid. They actually got Chad Green back. Yankee legend. I love Chad Green.
Yankee legend Chad Green.
Actually pitched against the Yankees yesterday. And they got a guy like Davis Schneider, some guy that they called up originally from I think Philly, and he's a South Jersey kid, and he's been hitting really well, really good numbers for him. Davis Schneider, his first major league at bat at Fenway, hit a home run over the Monster. So look, this is a good team. But I don't know. I think the team that really surprised or really I think I'm gonna go with is Seattle. I just feel like they have right just everything, that the atmosphere, what they proved last postseason, the pitching they have. Julio Rodriguez is a stud. Toronto doesn't impress me all that much, as I've said. That the Rangers.
It's the Rangers and Astros.
Right, the Rangers.
Rangers.
The Astros are going to get the division.
The Rangers, Mariners, Rays who clinched, and then Toronto.
The Astros are going to get the division, I think. Texas went on that massive losing streak, but they still have a great team on paper. But also losing Scherzer's big.
They shot themselves in the foot in a way.
Seattle's been that team, right? This is a team I feel like most people almost wrote off come mid-season, and they've just picked it up and played terrific baseball. Going to get over 90 wins. And really what they've proven in the past, how that they can do it with the best teams, I think. Right. I think this is shaping up to be a postseason. I think I go with the Mariners here. Just also right, the history, right, how long, right, last year they made it, but how they want to create a great baseball culture in Seattle. I've always been high on the Mariners, always really liked them, and I think I'm going to go with them to be the sneakiest of the wildcard teams.
Colin.
So taking a look at the AL pitcher, I'm going to give the first. Oh, obviously the Rays already have one of the spots clinched. I'm also going to go for the Blue Jays because once again they're going to be playing the Yankees a lot down the stretch. I say they pick up some more wins there, but mostly focusing on this Rangers versus Mariners race. Both teams have 10 games left, and 7 of those games are against each other. Yeah. So you're going to have a 3-game set in Seattle and a 4-game set in Texas. Now, it's really obviously the wild card spot is going to come down to basically that is the playoff series right there. It's going to come down to who can win those games. But I'm going to go on Lakehurst. I'm going to go for Texas. And the reason why also is that I think that Texas can keep this competitive, but the other 3 games that they play, Seattle plays Houston, whereas Texas gets Los Angeles. And I think being able to play the Angels instead of the Astros, I think that obviously goes in Texas's favor. And listen, this is a team that had a really good start to the season. I mean, I remember even the All-Star game. How many guys from that lineup were in the All-Star game? I mean, this is a great lineup. Obviously, Corey Seager leading the way. I'm going to go for the Rangers here. Listen, because, like I said, obviously being able to play the Angels, I mean, we can't really go into it too much here, but the whole Shohei Ohtani situation, I mean, that is really devastating for that franchise. Also, the Mike Trout also being out for the season, that team is going to be if you're going to be competitive, that should be a sweep for the Rangers. So for that reason, I think that Texas is going to step up to the occasion. I think Texas gets that final wild card slot in the AL. There we go.
So my first team that I like making that spot, I wanted to put Seattle here, but you can't go wrong with Toronto. I mean, you guys have mentioned it
Yeah.
already. Jose Barrios, you mentioned that comeback, you could say. He's a 3.5 ERA. He's had a solid season. The issue for me, so their run difference is actually kind of trash, and they've allowed the second most runs out of teams in the wild card, and as you know, yeah, it's the second most runs in the teams that are in the wild card race right now and have the lowest run difference. So they allow runs and they don't really score. So that could be the possible concern. I mean, it's only plus 71. The one stat that concerns me real quick is I don't there's two stats. And I just want your initial reaction to this. Seattle this season, and this is why I think they're going to make it over Texas. They're 33-42 against team. Actually, no, it's this is why I think they're going to change the narrative. They're 33-42 against teams over 500. Yet they're in the spot they're in. And a lot of those losses came in the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
They've been over, I believe they're over 500 against teams that are over 500 in the second half. So they've proven that they can kind of be there. But the other issue is that Texas is awful on the road. So if you're trying to tell me that, you're going to play like Houston or something eventually. Do they play Houston at the end of the season?
Yeah.
And you gotta, if it's in Minute Maid, you kind of have to bang on yourself. They're 500 on the road. They're 37-37, which is not very good.
No.
To be fair, though, to their credit, the Minnesota Twins are 38-40 on the road. But that's your comparison that you can make. So my two wildcard teams, of course, I can't back down against Toronto. I think their offense is going to need to pick it up for them to be competitive.
Yeah.
And then, I have to go with my guys from Seattle. I mean, listen, Texas is going to have injury woes. They're going to be disappointing, and there will be some question marks about that team in the offseason.
Yeah, I feel like I am part of me also just wants to say that I obviously can see it being Texas. I don't want to make it seem because I don't, and the reason I say I don't want to make it seem like I'm anti-Texas Rangers because I didn't think this team was going to the playoffs, and here they are. They could get 90 wins and be in it, and even without Scherzer, right? The thing with this Rangers team that it's crazy to me, right? They're obviously so anti-analytical. I mean,
It just drives you nuts.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to see a team do that and have success. It's just they are so anti-analytical. Some of the moves they made, the Scherzer trade, that is just, I mean,
anti-analytics.
Well, really, just because I mean, you look at what they gave up and the amount of money they're taking on for Max Scherzer, how's he pitched in big games recently, and how like the age of that's how he's getting up there in age. The Chapman trade is already looking like a loss for them as they traded Cole Reagans to the Kansas City Royals, who's been one of the best pitchers in baseball since going over there. They could have used him right now instead of Aroldis Chapman, who definitely does not have a great postseason, track record as we know very well. So I mean, I really, but I don't want to make it seem like I'm anti Rangers here because I did say they were going to miss the playoffs at the beginning of the year. I didn't think they were ready yet. And here they are in this spot. So I could definitely see it being the Rangers. They're a terrific baseball team. But I have a feeling that it is going to end up being Seattle, even though the schedule might go in Texas's favor.
Well, let's flip it over to the National League because we already have two teams that have clinched their division with Atlanta and the Dodgers. But this wild card race is much more open.
Right.
And I cannot wait to talk about this one. We'll pin it over to Colin again. Out of the team, what combination of three wild card teams do you think will be the wild card teams right now? Right now, it'll probably change in a week because some of these teams I think might play each other at this point. But listen, first of all, a shout out to the Mets and Yankees for if they lose 3 games, they're out. You guys are both disappointing. Figure it out. But enough about me wanting to rant against both of those teams. The Red Sox also get eliminated with a loss or someone else winning or any of the top 3 teams winning a game. They actually had a pretty decent season. But enough about those teams. We'll head to the National League. We'll pin it over to Colin again. Third wildcard spot's up for grabs. I think it's down to 5 teams for the third wildcard spot. You put 6 in with Arizona for those 2 wildcard spots. So what combination of 3? Well, real quick, what are your combination of 3 teams for the National League wild card?
Well, obviously the first one has to be the Philadelphia Phillies. You know, this is a team who we saw go on that run last year, almost
You
won the World
praised them in the
Series.
playoffs.
And, you know, yeah, I think this is still a very good baseball team. I think obviously you kind of have to have them in there in the wild card. Second, I think Arizona gets it because, listen, this is a team who outperformed expectations this year of like what I've seen out of them. Really, Arizona have been kind of irrelevant for the past few years. We really haven't talked about Arizona Diamondbacks baseball that much in general. But listen, the team who deserves it this year. I think they get that second wild card spot. And for the last one, really the main three contenders are going to be Chicago, Miami, and Cincinnati. Now, I really want to pick Cincinnati here. I do. I like the energy that team had this year. Like really, once Ellie De La Cruz got called up, seeing how much more electric that team got. But I'm probably going to go with Chicago. I think that Cincinnati makes it a close run, but I'm going to say Chicago gets that last spot. I think they're consistent throughout the year. Also, obviously playing in the NL Central, I think that Chicago takes that final spot. So I'm going to keep it right now, chalk going as it is, Philadelphia, Arizona, Chicago. But I do think Cincinnati makes a run for it.
I'm going to go next year because I have the first two teams similar. I have Philadelphia, of course. Of course, I have the Arizona Diamondbacks, who I thought were a sleeper entering the season. But I'm going different for the third wild card spot, and I am going with the Cincinnati Reds. Now, you're probably thinking, Robbie, what the heck are you saying? How the heck are the Reds going to make the playoffs? Look at their schedule to finish the year. You get Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and St. Louis. Now, granted, the Reds may be totally awful on the road against the Cardinals in the last couple of years. That may be true. But I feel like this is going to be the one time where the narrative just totally changes and the Cincinnati Reds will make the playoffs. Listen, I wish the Marlins would make it, but I think the Cubs are going to totally choke this, and the Reds are going to make it on the last day. They're going to make it interesting till the very end. No matter what, this will be one of my favorite wild card races. I wish the Mets were in it, but listen, you can't get everything right in life. So, listen, I want the Reds to make it. If they had any time to make the playoffs, other than that one time where the NL Central was god-awful and the Reds made like trades to really better themselves, the Reds didn't do much at the deadline. This is just a narrative for me. If the Reds did more at the deadline, you can argue they'd be in the divisional race. Heck, you can argue they'd be in like the second wild card, I think. So this does go a little bit against the Reds. They shot themselves in the foot a little bit for not doing anything at the deadline. However, staying put has got them in a positive situation. I think they're going to do barely enough, and they're going to squeak into the last wildcard spot at the last possible moment. Kind of what you see on a regular I-95 there, where you just have those one guys trying to pan off off to an exit, and they just go off and ride into the sunset. That's what the Cincinnati Reds, I think, are going to do for me. So the Reds are my last wildcard spot. Chris, what do you got for us?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, I think the Phillies are going to easily get this. I mean, let's take a look at their schedule here. I think that, they're 4 games up. Yeah, the Mets at home.
You never thought those games would be a pushover. Now
they should feast on these 4 games really, and then it's the Pirates, and then the Mets again in Citi Field. A lot of 7 games left against the Mets. Can the Phillies take care of business against them?
They should.
And they're also 4 games up. That team is great. But now, right, they're the ones they're going to be expected to win a playoff series. I should pull this up, like a playoff bracket as things stand.
I think the Phillies would be playing Arizona, and then the Cubs would be playing Milwaukee.
Let's see here.
Is that what it is?
Oh, sorry. I don't know. Maybe is it Arizona? Maybe. By
the way, quick note: Chris's World Series pick is still possible, okay. People. No, it's still possible because he has the Cubs in the World Series. I just had to bring that up because I forgot to bring that up last week.
Well, the Phillies, I think they're definitely getting it. The Diamondbacks, I mean, it's not, other than that, I know they have 80 wins, and you see that difference in the 70 teams still in the 70 win column, and the Diamondbacks with over 80 wins, but they're only a game and a half up. And I believe their schedule is I mean, well, I know they're playing the Yankees starting tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow night against the Yankees. Then it's the White Sox and the Astros to end the year. So it's an interesting schedule. Game and a half up though. That team has played overall very well. I think they'll get the second spot. For the third spot, it doesn't go maybe it's maybe not in their favor, but I am gonna stick with my Chicago Cubs.
Listen, I respect the hell out of that because if you changed that pick, I think we would both be laughing like crazy.
I can't.
I would be.
I can't. The bottom line is right. Again, it does not work in their favor and therefore my favor. because they have played really awful baseball recently. I mean, they have, I think they've lost 5 of their last 6 games, 6 of the last 7 rather, including losing 13-7 at home to the Pirates yesterday. They play 1 more against the Pirates, then 3 against the Rockies at home. Those are games they have to win. But then it's Atlanta and the Brewers. That's tough. That's going to be tough. And then when you look at what Cincinnati has, and I think Miami's a team that we're not talking about a whole lot here, mostly because, I mean, they can't be losing series to the Mets like they did at home. And,
Yep.
the way that stadium and right, no one goes to those games, it seems like it just really, it feels like everything's against them. But they're a good team. They're going to get have an 80-win year. I don't think anyone really expected this. Not for nothing, but the San Francisco Giants and San Diego Padres being, 3 to, the Padres are 4.5 back.
I don't know
Giants
how
are
they're
3
there.
games back. Could we see madness there? But again, does not work in their favor. But it's not necessarily in their favor. But I am gonna stick with the Cubs to get that 3rd spot because I see it. And even if they don't, right, it was still an overall. They got hot at the end there. Their pitching has stayed strong even with the loss of Marcus Stroman. Right, they got to pick it up soon. But I believe the Reds, because if the Cubs can win, the Reds have the Pirates. Yeah, ridiculously easy schedule. But I was gonna say, right, maybe if the Reds can drop a couple games to the Pirates, if the Pirates can sneak away with a couple wins, and the Cubs can gain some ground against Colorado, they need to do it this weekend because it's going to be tough against Atlanta and Milwaukee. But Chicago's got to figure it out now if they want to get that last spot. But I think they'll get it.
I like that idea. So real quick, we'll head into our Thursday night football predictions. And by the way, I just got word that 3 games might be heavily impacted with rain this week due to a possible tropical cyclone, which conveniently is when I'm not going to be here at campus. So hopefully I don't get pounded by the rain. But enough about myself. We have a Thursday night football game to get into real quick. For the last 5 minutes of today's show, you have the New York Giants, your guys' team, heading up against the San Francisco 49ers. Now, before I go into each of us go into our prediction, we'll quickly go up with what Instagram said. Of course, make sure to follow Into the Stands. That's actually not where the poll is. Make sure to follow Into the Stands on Instagram at Into the Stands, of course. And a poll, you guys are really interesting characters. And now, granted, I don't blame you at picking your team. 42% they'll pick the Giants. I mean, granted, some people were Giants fans. I respect that.
Smart people.
Absolutely.
But I don't know, guys. I mean, granted, Colin picked it just to troll, I feel like. But I can't blame him being a Giants fan picking the Giants. He didn't pick the Giants. I didn't pick the Giants. But we'll go into each of our picks real quick. We'll start with Chris. We'll start with you today.
I'm just,
what do you got?
I feel bad, but I'm just so on the 49ers train today. I'm not.
You really are.
I'm just not. I just cannot see any possible scenario where the Giants win this game as much as I want to have. If they do, God, I'll be so happy. I mean, that would be huge for the Giants. But it's not going to happen, right? The 49ers are an unbelievable football team. The Giants, at the very least, what goes in their favor, what is somewhat an optimistic view or way to view this game is the fact that they do have this energy from this game against Arizona. But again, it's just that it is at the end of the day, right? And I'm the one saying it as a Giants fan, right? That at the end of the day, as much a magical of a win as it was, it is over. It was a win against the Cardinals, and now they have to do this against San Francisco, or now they're heading into San Francisco, and they have to flip the page, right? But this 49ers team is incredible, right? An incredible roster, right? And Brock Purdy looks like he's the guy for the job. This is a team that could go to the Super Bowl, probably the favorite in the NFC to go all the way to the Super Bowl. A terrific team in San Francisco on Thursday Night Football. And with Saquon Barkley and Andrew Thomas being out, as I said, it's not looking good. I am going to pick the 49ers to win this game, but I am going to say that the Giants put up 14 points. I'm going to say the 49ers win this game 28-14.
Colin, what is your prediction?
Over to you first.
You want me to go first? All right. So, listen, my big thing about this game was the injuries. And of course, you got to mention Andrew Thomas. You got to mention Saquon Barkley. What people don't know about, may not have heard about till a couple hours ago, was Brandon Ayuk, who might be out for this game tonight. He was my player to watch originally going into this game tonight against the Giants. So it's going to be a little bit interesting. I think that the 49ers pass rush is going to have a field day. That's going to be one of my areas to watch, is the 49ers pass rush. However, I am going to go with San Francisco 49ers. I'm picking them to win 38-10. Listen, the 49ers are a great football team, and I think they're going to – this game, what I will expect, though, is that the first quarter is not going to be like Dallas, where you just feel hopeless within the first 10 minutes. My players to watch out for tonight, unless I want to pick George Kittle, I'm not picking George Kittle. My player to watch out for tonight is going to be Deebo Samuel, over 100 receiving yards. That's my big player to watch. I know I love the Giants corners. Listen, it just feels like Deebo's night. Over 100 yards for Deebo Samuel. Brock Purdy, big day for him. Niners win 38-10. Colin finishes off.
So this feels kind of surreal because it's the first ever time on the show for one of these segments I could actually talk about the New York Giants and give a prediction here, but let's get into it. So I don't think this is going to be the disaster that the game against the Cowboys was, but you have to just look at the facts here. Obviously, without Saquon Barkley, that instantly takes away the running game. Maybe if you have Daniel Jones there rushing the football, who he had a pretty good rush. He's been pretty good on the run so far this season, especially last year. But just also, we didn't even mention him because obviously, not many people who aren't hardcore Giants fans don't know much about Ben Bredeson, but he's also the starting left guard. He's not going to be playing tonight. So the starting offensive line is going to be Joshua Ezeudu, Shane Lemieux, John Michael Schmitz, Marcus McKeithen, and Evan Neal, because Mark Lewinsky actually got benched. And let me just say that was a good move because he did a way better job than Mark Lewinsky did. But anyway, that's your starting lineup. And you're going to have to go against that 49ers pass rush. You're going to need to go up against Nick Bosa. You're going to need to go up against Javon Hargrave. You're going to also need to go up against Fred Warner there at the linebacker spot. And saying all that, I'm going to pick the Giants. No, I'm absolutely not. The 49ers are going to win this football game. The San Francisco 49ers are going to beat the New York Giants. I'm going to say final score, 49ers 38, Giants 17. But listen, before I finish off talking about this, I just want to give some context to how unlikely the Giants are going to win this game. Daniel Jones might be the worst primetime quarterback in NFL history.
It's not Kirk Cousins.
Daniel Jones has the worst primetime record for a quarterback since 1970 for a quarterback with 10 plus starts, a 1-10 record, a 0.91 winning percentage. The second worst is Andy Dalton, who is 6-21 with a 222.222 winning percentage. And his stats and his career in primetime, all his non-primetime games, Daniel Jones is 21, 22, and 1. That's not that bad. As we just said, primetime 1 and 2. His pass touchdown to interception ratio in primetime, 12 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. Not in primetime, 50 touchdowns, 22 interceptions.
Jesus.
His yards per attempt in primetime, 5.7 passing yards. Not in primetime, 6.9 passing yards. Now, you may want to wonder, what was that one win that he got? Well, it was against the Washington Commanders, but we've seen Daniel Jones have a lot of good games against the Washington Commanders. But yeah, if you want to ask me who the big player is going to be here, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey. Listen, the Giants have been consistently last year and this year one of the worst run defenses in football. The 49ers having that star running back tonight, like the Giants, this is kind of looking like it was going to be a match between Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, two of the most explosive running backs in the league. Christian McCaffrey's going to have a big day. I say Christian McCaffrey over 150 rushing yards. Like I said before, San Francisco 49ers, 38-17.
I would like to intervene.
Yeah.
I would actually like to announce a score change on my part.
Okay,
I'm going to add a touchdown on the 49ers part.
So you're going with, what's your score,
35-14. 35-14.
Listen, I love that. That will be all from us today. Thank you guys so much for watching another episode of Into the Stands. Thank you guys once again for watching. Sorry I repeated that twice. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Into the Stands, and we'll see you guys next Thursday. Every Thursday from 5 to 6. Good night, everybody.
Go Giants.